Any idea you've had, anything you want to pursue, any concept you have that you think you should move forward, writing a book, starting a podcast, it doesn't matter what it is, do it. And do it with the conviction, knowing the only person that you need to satisfy is yourself, because that is the number one thing. It's not about being cool. It's not about what other people are going to say. It's not about what an audience might think. I write my books. I built these tools. I do all of these things because this is what I wish someone had out there for me. And I'm doing it for me. Along the way, I'm not blind to the fact it's going to benefit other people. And that feels great. But I have to be okay with it.
Discovery has evolved. We've moved from directories to links, then to intent signals. Now AI systems sit between your content and your audience, deciding what gets retrieved, summarized, cited, or ignored before a human ever sees it. My guest today, Duane Forrester, has lived every phase of that shift from both sides. He helped build the platforms at Microsoft Bing that shaped modern discovery, then advised hundreds of organizations on how search visibility actually works. As the former senior product marketing manager who oversaw the launch of Bing Webmaster Tools and helped bring schema.org to life, Duane now focuses on one core problem: how brands stay visible when machines, not people, are the first audience. In this conversation, we unpack his framework for a new set of KPIs built specifically for the AI era. Metrics designed for a world where LLMs like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Claude control the gates. Duane walks through the tools he's bootstrapped to track chunk retrieval frequency, embedding relevance, and citation rates, signals that popular SEO platforms don't even attempt to measure. We also explore why so many businesses never appear in AI-generated answers, the mental models Duane uses to ship meaningful work without getting stuck in his own head, and why asking fewer, better questions beats chasing every platform update. This episode cuts through the noise and gives you frameworks for measuring what actually matters in the machine layer. So without any further ado, on with the show. Duane, it's so great to have you back on the show.
Stephan, thank you. It's great to be back.
So you have a new book out. Congratulations on that, The Machine Layer.
Thank you very much.
Yes. How did this book come about? This is a very fast-moving space. It seems like as soon as you publish a book, it could be obsolete with all the advances that happen on a week-to-week basis in generative AI and AEO, answer engine optimization. So why a physical printed book? I know you have a Kindle edition, but why a book?
Yeah. So look, this is a collection of pieces of information, of learning, of knowledge, experiential based concepts that I wish I had 2-3 years ago. We all were there when ChatGPT launched, and it was a big deal. I think most of us who are practitioners in the industry within search could kind of see that something was coming. And we dug in a little bit and then dug in a lot. And then we started to see the changes happening really fast. And it still continues to happen really fast. This is literally something that I wished existed 2 years ago. And I sat down and thought about it and was like, well, what if I just start writing? And here we are. Months later, you end up with a book. It's my third published book. So I have a familiarity with the process. That doesn't scare me. What does scare me is the update cycle that I've set myself up for, because, I have a feeling that every 6 to 9 months, I'm going to be wanting to version this and just keep up with what we know is going to be a fast-paced, continually changing environment.
Right. So you have the option to do that since you're not working this time with a traditional publisher. You've self-published, so you can do updates as often as you want.
And the timing for the updates as well is a big differentiator. When you work with a traditional publisher, they will tell you the cycle of when your book goes to market. They will set direction on that, give you a timeline, you get a work back schedule, and you fill in the blanks and then get it to your editor and everyone moves forward. When it's your own and you're self-publishing, you control all of that. So if, I don't know, let's say next week, CES is all wrapped up and some big announcement has come out that changes the world of hardware, and then we see the platforms making demonstrative changes, I can go ahead and add a chapter in the book and then simply republish that as V2. And a week later, you have the freshest information. So as long as I can put that time and effort in, we can keep this book right at the cutting edge.
Yeah, that's really cool. And some of these principles and frameworks that you provide in the book are pretty evergreen, right? So you have established some new KPIs for measuring and gauging success in the AEO world and with generative AI. You have some other frameworks that we can talk about in the course of this interview. So let's actually maybe start with those KPIs, key performance indicators, which are new because this is a new world. This is a new era we're entering. And presumably these KPIs will be still valid in a year's time or 2 years' time, right?
Well, look, I believe so. I just want to like set an expectation on this. Okay. The reason that I've started these things and suggested these things is because we don't have systems that are tracking this information, or at least when I thought of this framework back in early 2025, say around May, they didn't exist at that time. None of the tools were looking at these things. They weren't producing these pieces of information. And I come from that world. I come from inside enterprise where you do have to track against key performance indicators. You can call it goals, you can call it metrics, whatever you want. I'm using the phrase interchangeably. But it occurred to me that we have a new interface, we have a new surface that is going to, by its own nature, build new pieces of data. We will see this happening, right? And those, I've outlined them as 12 KPIs. It's really important for people to understand that a few of those KPIs, we don't have access to the data for them. It has to come from the platform. So unless ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude shares this piece of data with us, we're not going to see it. The best we can get are proxies. However, there are new KPIs that I encourage people to be creating for themselves and tracking on their own. Things like chunk retrieval frequency and things like attribution rate in the AI outputs. These might sound fairly benign, like, okay, well, how many times is my chunk getting surfaced in an answer within ChatGPT? Sounds pretty logical. But you actually have to create the platform. You actually have to create the tracking for this yourself because there are almost no services available that do this. Some of the newer tools that we're starting to see, I recently, you had Ryan on with SERP Recon, and he's leaning into these areas, and there are several others that are leaning into these areas. But it's really important that practitioners dig in on these things. Like, you need to create a report that shows LLM answer coverage. That's one of the KPIs. And right now, that's a lot of just grunt work. You have to create the questions that people are asking. You have to go put them into the systems. You have to capture all of those answers. You have to determine whether you are cited. There's a link. You're mentioned. There's no link. You're paraphrased. It's obvious that your information has had an influence on the answer, or you're not included at all. You have to uncover those four states on your own manually to determine what a report looks like.
Yeah. But the problem with that is that everybody gets a different result, a different output from the LLM, including yourself. Even when you type the same exact prompt in a second time, you'll get a different, like the query fan out will be different and the output will be different. It's very, it's seemingly impossible.
It is an incredibly difficult space, but as a marketer, I would never not go get the data because it's difficult. I would capture the data and look for signals in the noise. And that's going to be hard. This is a new world for traditional practicing SEOs. We are used to data that's fairly straightforward and very contained and defined at this point. I mean, think about this. We're the better part of 30 years as an industry advanced from where we began. We have a pretty good handle on what the metrics are, how to track them, what we have access to, what we don't have access to. And over time, the platforms, Google and Bing and Yandex and every other search engine, has actually given us more information to work with. So we could play in that place with some level of certainty. Or at the very least, everyone has come to understand where the gray areas are and generally agreed on how to interpret them. Wild West, every person for themselves. These are phrases that filter through my mind now when we look at these situations. And I'm all about the data. Just I want more of that information. And yeah, it's messy. No question.
So have you built a tool for collecting this information, or are you doing it manually, just copy and paste into a Google Sheet where you have some sort of template or something?
The answer is yes. So
Okay.
I originally started. I originally started with just like a spreadsheet and the usual kind of point. I very quickly iterated into a platform called N8N, where I was automating different queries into areas. Grabbed some APIs from Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT. Um, Outgrew that pretty quickly. Then just got back into writing Python code, and now I have an entire tool suite that is not launched, but is available for me to do all of this work in the background in an automated fashion. So I can add in a client, I can go through and just say, okay, here are the reports that I want, and it will do everything. It will go in and give me a citation overview and tell me how I'm working. I preload queries into it. I preload URLs from my website. It will chunk from the content. It will compare that to what, like OpenAI, for example, would use that for, or how it aligns with a query. It does query fan out in the background. Query fan out to me is not a big deal. Like a lot of people are hung up on it. Like, ooh, look at what it shows me, and I'm like, it's a tool along the way. And so you use that to then say, okay, I'm a lazy client. I'll give you 5 questions that I think people are asking about me or that I should be the answer for. The query fan out fills in the blank, gets you up to about 25 or so, and then it just expands from there. And then you can get rated against all of those. So the content chunks from your website, how do they align? There's that kind of reporting. There's a technical layer in there as well. Are you blocking bots, and how much of your content is unique, or how much of it is overlapping semantically and maybe fighting itself? There is a compete view, so you can put a couple of competitors in there, and it will perform the same actions on their websites and content as it does on yours, and then tell you if you're outpacing them or not.
Wow. You're going to be releasing this tool anytime soon?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yes. Yes. Actually, I hadn't really planned on it, but we're kind of like traipsing down this pathway here. So I will say that my plan, as we record this, my plan is within a couple of weeks. This should be a live. I guess we'll call it a beta. I'm calling it an MVP, but it's going to be a really advanced MVP. It will be a waitlist scenario where I want to get a few people in, maybe a dozen or so companies in, pound on it, see what breaks, see what has to happen. In fact, this afternoon up on my whiteboard, you can't see it, but I have the outline for the bring your own API coding that I have to put in place, because maybe people want to put their own API in there for ChatGPT and run on their own pipeline and not be sharing whatever. I don't care. I just want to enable the feature, and that should be done soon. So it's something, again, like the book. As I was writing the book, I was learning about all of these different things, and I was thinking to myself, like, I built Webmaster Tools at Bing, so I'm predisposed to the concept of a tool set, a platform, and I'm really excited by it. And so hopefully others will be excited by it as well, and find value in it. I've run a few. I have a few friends. I've taken clients from them, run them through, and it's a little bit shocking to me what the performance of some of these companies looks like. And the thing that uncovers, and this is what was like so glaringly obvious to me, these businesses are struggling to get the fundamentals of traditional SEO done right. Like, they're struggling to really perform well in that environment. And it is really doing them no favors in this new environment. Like, it's obviously having an effect.
If you don't know what you don't know in an SEO world, then you certainly don't know what you don't know in an AEO world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So is this something that we could maybe have a sneak peek at? Can you maybe share your screen? I know you mentioned the Ryan Jones episode. I was really grateful to Ryan for being willing to share some kind of inside view behind the scenes of the tool and how it worked, and screen share some reports and things like that. Is that something that you're open to, or is it too close to the chest right now?
If I had a different business and the permissions, then I would go ahead and share it. There's no way to anonymize because this is literally meant to be like, here's your client dashboard. You as the client, you go ahead and see your data. The difficult part, and I suspect Ryan and I are friends. We've talked a lot about this. The difficult part is getting people to understand that there is an importance here, and that there is. I don't want to call it an urgency because I'm not interested in clickbait or any of those types of actions. But there is an urgency. There is a lot of change happening. I tracked something earlier this year in one of my Substacks where I walked back like for the history of Google doing updates and talking about them in public. So for that entire frame of time, I compared that to what ChatGPT has done and what OpenAI has done. And it was startling to me to realize that OpenAI does ChatGPT updates twice as fast as Google does updates. So it's like it's somewhere around like five and a half, like it's just shy of double. So they end up moving at a pace that is kind of outpacing what Google does. Now, unfortunately, that was looking at apples and oranges. We were talking about Google search updates because it's a concept that practitioners can wrap their head around. And I was comparing it to updates from this newfangled competitor that's on the scene. I think a better comparison would be Gemini updates to OpenAI, obviously, but Google doesn't talk a lot about Gemini updates. There's just not a lot on an official basis of, oh, we made this change, we made that change. Those are fewer and farther between. So, bottom line here, though, is goes right back to how you opened us up, right? The pace of change, it's real, it's fast, and I think it's going to continue to accelerate through 26 and 27.
Yeah, yeah, I love this kind of model that Ray Kurzweil offered of the accelerating rate of change. That at today's rate of change, when you compare that to 100 years ago, so let's say that you take the last 100 years of technological advancement, how many years into the future would, at today's rate of change, it take to get that same amount of 100 years of evolution happening? It's only 20 years because we're operating at a faster iteration rate. But because it's continuing to accelerate and not going to stay stagnant, then that 20 years actually becomes 12 years. So fitting 100 years of evolution, like 100 years ago, they were just inventing the toaster. And now we're thinking about what's 12 years from now when my kid is out of elementary school and in college. What? That's crazy to think that there'll be, who knows, flying cars and replicators and who knows what other craziness.
I will say that I looked at information around the adoption of Google from the day Google launched until they hit market saturation and I called market saturation 50% of consumers in America. It took Google 9 years to reach that plateau. And if you look at ChatGPT, and that 9 years equated to roughly 890 million users daily. Okay. So almost 3x the population of the United States all up, or at least double. When I tried to compare that to ChatGPT, ChatGPT is on track probably in the next 2 months or so, maybe 3 months, to hit 1 billion daily active users. And they're doing that in a 4.4 to 4.5 year period of time. So less than half the amount of time that it took Google, that's what it's taken ChatGPT to reach a similar plateau. And, I'd like to say that maybe better advertising or some such thing, like I honestly don't think that ChatGPT has done any advertising. I don't know that they've ever needed to. But the reality is, this is where we find ourselves. And I attribute it to consumer adoption. And if you look back when search started, I remember standing in a line at a grocery store and somebody had recognized me and said, "Oh, you're so and so's son." And they said, "What do you do now?" And I tried to explain to them what SEO was very early in my career. And it was a mess. At about 38 seconds, the eyes glazed over, totally lost them. They barely had the concept of the internet in their head as an everyday construct. And today, all of this stuff is so native, these systems, and more importantly, I think, consumer behavior around these systems, adoption of these things. Like, we as a, I guess, species have become so laissez-faire with eye-opening technology because we see so much of it. We expect that it's there. We expect the next big thing, that we move very quickly from awe to adoption. And it happens much faster than in 1998.
Yeah. I'd say we're mostly a society of digital natives now.
Oh, I would 100% agree with that. And obviously, outside the populations that simply have no connectivity, you can point to rural farmers in Africa who have a better, faster growth curve on digital nativity than we ever had. Like, it took us longer to reach fluency on mobile devices, for example. It's all they've ever had. And so that's their world. You talk about toasters being invented 100 years ago. CES was showing off the hypersonic knife this week that literally vibrates the blade with hypersonics. And you don't need to push when you cut the tomato. You simply need to rest it and it will slice through on its own. I'm not saying this is the greatest use of science that humanity has come up with to this point. But if you want to talk about things in your kitchen, yeah, where are we going to be in 12 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's right. Wild. I was just thinking about, I really want to see what's behind the scenes with your tool set. Do you think you could maybe create some screenshots and we can include them in the show notes for this episode? I mean, you could black out the identifiable bits that would cause like issues with NDAs and so forth.
No, I actually think that, oh, this page isn't long enough to scroll, but I bet if I bring this page over here, this is actually going to show you the main dashboard that a client would see when they log in. It's literally a collection of data points from all of the other reports on the back end. And I'll hop into another one of those reports in a moment, and we can take a look at things. The query alignment is up here. It's taking a look at 25 queries over 100 pages on a website. It is doing a lookup via ChatGPT to the API at OpenAI, I should say, to understand what a score should look like, what a vector alignment score should look like against specific queries that you've entered. So in this example, we can see here that the average score is a 5 out of 1. Some of those, if you would be able to see the reports that I unfortunately can't show you, those reports would show you a score of close to 7, like a 6.9, 7.3 for the best performer, and obviously lower scores into the 4s and almost 3s for the poorest performers. Based on that scoring, we'll chunk this up for people on strong, moderate, weak, and where there's a gap, where you're below a 0.40, for example. That just signals an opportunity. You don't have the right content. It's not written the right way. It's not aligning well with the actual query. So you have an opportunity to target that content, change it, see how it performs. There are 83 pages crawled in this version. 2 of these have medium technical issues. There's nothing in here that I'd worry about other than high issues, and we will take a look at that specific report next. Citation tracking. I mentioned earlier that a lot of companies are going to be surprised and that things are changing quickly. This is an example of that. In the citation tracking, out of 50 queries that were actually tracked, not a single one included this client in an answer. Not cited, not mentioned, not paraphrased. They're simply not there for any of those topics. That is a huge red flag for this business because ChatGPT obviously is not including them. There is a compete report here. You can put your top two competitors in, and it will run all of the same reports against your that you would do for yourself against your competitors, and then it ranks it and shows you how you're doing. In this example, obviously repeating your average score is 5. It's showing there's one competitor in play. You're winning in one instance. There are 6 high priority areas that you need to look at because they're beating you, and 9 are kind of on the bubble and float anywhere just below winning all the way down to the high priority area. If we look at chunk performance, we've created 33 chunks individually here. 10 of them just aren't performing. 21 would never be cited. And again, this is running through the APIs at Claude and OpenAI. And we're handing this to the system and essentially saying, is this valuable? Would you use this? And the system is coming back with a score. And from that score, we can chunk this out and say, here's performance relative to these things. In this account, there are 25 active queries, 185 in a library. You can go ahead and move them around as much as you like, check different versions. There are maximum of 100 URLs in here. There's 83 crawled on this website. You can add more if you like, cycle through them. So that's just the main overview page.
When you say they're up to 250 queries here, those are prompts that you decide that you're going to check to see if you're showing up, your brand, your company is showing up with a citation or a mention without a link, or no citation or mention at all, or paraphrase. And how do you generate those prompts? Is that a manual process? Is that something that you can use AI to help you with, or your tool set to help you with?
So the platform is built that like you gotta give me something, like give me 5 that you think are important to your business, and then from there it will go to OpenAI again via the API, and it will run the query fan out on that, and then it brings it back and says, here's a list of your queries that are related to these topics, and you can select what you want in there. So you can go ahead and load them all up yourself if you want. There's a function in there for a CSV upload. So if you want to take the time to create your own list of 250, by all means, go ahead. I'll ingest that. Don't really care. It's entirely up to the consumer. There are, you can tell, limits on these things. That has to do with launch and scalability, also cost over time. My expectation is that as I have more backend data, I will be able to relax those limits and increase them. However, there's something very important that we don't talk about a lot. I know Ryan has talked about it. I know Dixon Jones has talked about it. Not surprisingly, these are gentlemen who run their own tool sets, and they've come to, I think, a similar conclusion that I've come to, which is this approach that we have in SEO of tracking millions of keywords or even tens of thousands of keywords. That is not a good approach for this new AI world that we live in. A lot of those things are tightly related to each other. They're not semantically different enough to make a difference to ChatGPT when it's making a decision on an answer. So a lot of that gets compressed. My focus has always been, even in the world of SEO, you need to like keep this human manageable and at levels that humans can parse information around. That's why part of the reason why we have limits in these systems. Over time, we'll probably see these limits relax and expand. But I also think that there's going to be a practical limit to this where you don't need to go track 10,000 of your top questions that people ask about you. Because for most businesses, they don't cover a breadth of topics to the point where 10,000 queries would be relevant.
Unless you're a major conglomerate or something, then maybe you need that kind of
Yeah, and
scale.
if you are, I can see that. If you, especially if you're like a large e-commerce scenario, 2 or 3 questions per product makes perfect sense. And if you have 8,000 products, there you go. You're already at scale. Um,
Yeah.
but that's not the vast majority of the internet.
Also, a shortcut to getting past these growth constraints as a small tool provider would be to get acquired, right? So somebody like Neil Patel coming in and buying you like he bought Answer the Public, and then these query limits and URL limits get 10 or 100x.
I mean, look, this is an entirely bootstrapped effort on myself, like on my own. I'm back into learning coding and using the scant knowledge that I have around it from my history.
And you're probably using AI to help you with it, right? You're using maybe Claude Code and so forth to maybe not vibe code for you, but debug and all that.
It's a massive time saver. For you to be able to most of my time is spent in PMing in product management, and setting constraints. The actual hard coding, like when it comes to validating the code, just run it and it will come back immediately and tell me, you've got an extra colon here, you've got, too much spacing in this spot, your alignment is off in this area, and it just gives you the line number, it tells you what the problem is, and you go through and you fix all that crap. And then, it's boring and unsexy, but after a few weeks of doing all that, you have executable code that does pretty cool things.
And you have decades of experience with this kind of thing of building tools for webmasters and business owners. I mean, you were maybe the main guy behind Bing Webmaster Tools, or one of the main guys, right?
Listen, I will pull that robe back a little bit. I was the PM, so I was essentially the front end. I was the alignment with consumers. I interfaced directly with a programming lead, and that person ran the team that did all of the code work that built what I had put up on a whiteboard and said, "This is what we want." It's a fairly common approach inside a tech company that you have a PM, you have a dev, and they work together and product comes to market. In this case, I'm all of that. I'm the guy who last night at 10 p.m. was still sitting here squashing bugs because I wanted to convert all of the reporting on download from CSV to Excel because I wanted to control layout and formatting and information. And you can't do that in CSV. You can in Excel. So I had to go through and convert all of those. Like, that's me. I'm staring at a 6-foot whiteboard with all of these must fix, must adds, do this, expand that. And it's fascinating. It's skills that I haven't used in a little while that I'm dusting off, but it's allowed me to create something like this and say, look, I think what's really important for people is information, is data. They need these pieces of information to start. You had mentioned earlier, what we don't know, we don't know. And a part of this whole concept of the 12 KPI framework, and then all the way through to these tools, shouldn't surprise anybody that these tools are based largely around my 12 KPI framework and trying to get as much of that information visible as possible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, can you go through each of them? Because I think you gave only a few of them, right? So can you give the full list of the 12 KPIs?
Yeah, I did. I did. I gave a few. There is a list. Let me read through these things for you in the audience, Stephan. So we talked on chunk retrieval frequency. It's how often your chunks are retrieved by AI systems. Embedding relevance score. It's a measure of how closely your content's semantic embedding aligns with the user's query embedding. And look, I'm just going to say straight up front, it's totally okay if people are hearing this and they have no idea what I'm saying. Entirely acceptable. When we first started talking about SEO out loud, people thought we were talking Latin. We're at that same point again in history where we're talking about concepts like embedding relevance. And unless you actually go look it up, you haven't encountered it yet. Attribution rate and AI outputs. This is a simple percentage of, the AI responses for your brand is explicitly credited. The AI citation account, number of times your content is linked or referenced in responses. A vector index presence rate. This is one of those things where I talked about we need the platform to give the data, And this is one of those things because the vector index lives inside ChatGPT. And if you need to know your rate of presence within that, they are the only ones who can tell you that. However, and I'm going to put my geek hat on really hard here for a moment, gang. You can go and you can set up a vector index through a company called Weaviate or Pinecone. Those are two separate companies. You can build your own index, the vector index, similar to how ChatGPT constructs one. And then you can ask it to do these alignments for you that I have running myself through these tool sets. And that is a proxy for how a system like ChatGPT operates. It is not a mirror for ChatGPT because the next layer to that you're going to learn about is weightings and temperatures. And the weighting is how much of something is important versus something else. We're familiar with that concept from traditional search and algorithms. The temperature then is like a third dimension where you refine, now that you've set the weight, how much is it hotter or colder within that area. You can build all of that on your own as a standalone platform, feed your website's content into it, and you will get an approximation of how ChatGPT operates in the background. It is not, again, a mirror, but that is a metric that I think is really important. And if you can create your own proxy, you can start understanding things like, do you have technical issues that are blocking your content from getting into a vector index? Because if you do, you will never be included in an answer. It's that simple. So I include that as a metric. We've got retrieval confidence score. Another fun one is the reciprocal rank fusion contribution. And RRF has been around for a while. I encourage folks to go look it up. It's a fairly straightforward concept of blending a couple of different things that happens right now in traditional search. It's one of the things that makes traditional search as advanced as it is. We have the LLM answer coverage. I mentioned that one earlier. Breadth of topics or queries that your content can be retrieved or used. Query fanout plays a role in this, as well as semantic understanding. AI model crawl success rate, semantic density score. I recently did a Substack on that one. That's the richness and completeness of your content in a given technical area. This goes all the way back. And if you're an SEO, you'll remember this. SEO and Bing, heck, I was doing it when I was on stage for Bing, telling you how important the depth of your content is. That's what we're talking about with semantic density. And if you haven't been doing well with that, you have to fix that. If you have been doing well with that, you're already set, you're ready to go. I'm encouraging folks to look at a zero-click surface presence. This right now requires a lot of manual tracking. All of the zero clicks, what's happening with that, whether it's a smartwatch, a wearable device, smart glasses, smart speaker, the obvious zero click in a search panel, all of that, and create a report around that so that you have some sense of your brand in the ether. And then the final one is the machine validated authority. And this is trust levels that AI systems assign to your content. And this is a really, really important one. That chapter in the book is fairly dense. It's fairly long. We go into that. There's two gates that are essentially evolved. That's how I'm describing them. But I'm going to pause here for a moment, Stephan, because that was a ton to throw out there. And I want to just invite you back onto your own show for a moment here.
That was fabulous. And clearly these are not just standard metrics that everyone in the SEO industry is familiar with and measuring. So I'm sure that our listener would love to get, for one, a copy of your book where you go into more depth about each of these metrics, but also do you have some sort of glossary or cheat sheet or downloadable guide to these metrics that they could get for free even if they don't get your book?
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to suggest to folks. Obviously, going to benefit me greatly if you take a run by Amazon and grab a copy of the book, whether it's a physical or a Kindle. That's available globally. Wherever you're at, you should be able to find it. If Amazon is selling, you will be able to grab a copy. The frameworks. I've got 3 frameworks. I've got the 12 Gen AI KPIs. I've got an AI visibility journal and scoring rubric and a 90-day learning path. So if you're still wrapping your head around AI and how to fit it into your either daily work or your team's workflow, because there's an executive layer and a practitioner layer in this 90-day learning path, all of that is available on duaneforrester.com right now. Just hit the website and look for frameworks in the navigation, and you'll get right to the page. So all kinds of information in there. There are a lot of other frameworks that are in the book itself that I'm not sharing because obviously I would, really appreciate people reading the book. But there's a lot of information in there, and I'm, as Stephan, as you know, I'm not afraid to give away secrets. That's always been a hallmark for me. I'm happy to share and help people move forward.
Yes, and I love you for that. You've been doing that for a long time. We've shared many stages together. I remember fondly us speaking at Affiliate Summit, doing the keynote panel together, both at Affiliate Summit West and Affiliate Summit East. Yeah, yeah. So I have a special place in my heart for you, my friend. Also, I'm so grateful for that wonderful post you wrote about me in 2016. We didn't talk about that in the first interview back in episode 38 because that hadn't published yet. But later that year, you published this beautiful piece about our friendship and how impactful I was on you and your life and your career. Do you want to give a little 20-second summary of that? I know it's a long post, so I can't really do it in 20 seconds, but
No, I'll say this. There's a point for everyone, I think, where they recognize people that have had an impact in their life. Sometimes that's negative, sometimes it's positive. But I think it's a really important action that people have for themselves, that they do. It's like being introspective at times. It's very powerful and it's very useful. Um, you came into my life at a time when my career was just taking off and growing, gave me advice that helped me shape my own personal frameworks that I lived by throughout my career. And it's proven immensely valuable. And the people who are watching this, they think maybe there's like a one-time touch on the well. For those watching, Stephan and I are in regular contact, and we share a great number of things with each other in terms of personal thinking, approaches to life, and these kinds of concepts, each from our own unique perspective. And I can say that Stephan has just been one of the most impactful people. It was my career that made this intersection happen with Stephan, but he's become somebody who is personally valuable to me, very much a friend. I mean, we're sitting here a decade after that. And Stephan, I still feel this way. And you are still helping me. I become better through select people. Stephan, you're still one of those people for me. And thank you.
aw, that's so sweet. I appreciate you so much. Wow. It's an awkward moment here. I don't know if I need to get a tissue or something. But anyways, you've done amazing, great things in your life, in your business, in your career path. If you wanted to give some life, career, kind of just overall, um, I don't know, just overall advice for our listener or viewer to make their lives better, what kind of wisdom nugget would you like to share with them?
Okay, I'm gonna share a couple of things. And look, these two things, people may want to roll their eyes at it. That's okay. These came to me through two important people, Stephan, you being one of them, and another friend of mine, Dennis. Dennis and I bumped into each other one day at an airport, and I'm like, "Hey, where are you going?" And he's like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm going to speak at a conference." And he says, "I'm going to a Tony Robbins seminar." And we both just stopped and looked at each other, gave each other a hug, and then kept running in our opposite directions. But I kept ruminating on this idea of Tony Robbins, the value, what he does, and this kind of idea. I'm not here to tell anyone to go to anyone specifically, but I learned things. I learned to get out of my own head. I learned to cultivate relationships with people whose thinking I could validate and that resonated with me. I learned to build those relationships on a peer to peer level that I need to bring as much as I get. That's how you find this value exchange. Those three things alone completely changed the direction of my life. And I'm not going to say that I have everything figured out. I'm not going to say that I don't get in my own head and get stuck in there from time to time. But attending seminars like this, you get a sense of you develop mental tools that will help you break through those things. And so I will say this to anyone who's watching this: any idea you've had, anything you want to pursue, any concept you have that you think you should move forward, writing a book, starting a podcast, it doesn't matter what it is, do it. And do it with the conviction, knowing the only person that you need to satisfy is yourself, because that is the number one thing. It's not about being cool. It's not about what other people are going to say. It's not about what an audience might think. I write my books. I built these tools. I do all of these things because this is what I wish someone had out there for me. And I'm doing it for me. Along the way, I'm not blind to the fact it's going to benefit other people. And that feels great. But I have to be okay with it. So straight up, number one most powerful thing you can do is stop listening to the voice in your head. Find the mental models that get you around that let you break out of that cycle. You are your own best friend and your own worst enemy. So having a tool to short circuit that is the most powerful thing that I have learned in my life to date.
Yeah. On a similar note, just kind of piggybacking on that inner critic, when I find the fastest way to silence that is to get tuned into a higher frequency radio station, because think of yourself as or your brain as kind of like an FM antenna or a tuner. So if you listen to a higher quality radio station, you'll get different messages. So I ask God in prayer to raise my vibration, and then I find that the quality of the inner voice meanderings that I hear are actually 10 or 100 times better. And from that, I can do stuff that I thought previously were impossible, set some impossible goals, and you just might achieve them. Because I love this quote from Ford way back in the day, like, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. For me, it's meditation. I've been doing this for the last 25 years of my life. I can sit down, I can meditate my way through the concepts, giving myself permission to leave an idea behind because it will still be there later when I come back. Massively powerful. And that one, I don't know if it'll work for everybody, but that one is responsible alone for more better quality nights of sleep for me than anything else. Giving myself permission to leave the idea on the shelf and not solve it immediately. It just quiets down that part of the conversation. And yeah, you got to do it over and over again. But like anything, with some practice, it is game changing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, another way to think of it is just give the problem to God and let God solve it for you and pop it into your head.
Well, that's the other thing too. I will routinely stack up my problems at night before I go to bed. And what is constantly a marvel to me is how many answers I have in the morning. Because look, at the end of your day, you're kind of strung out. You're exhausted from everything, all of the input, visual, auditory, people asking questions, you solving problems, energy management, all of this exhausts you. And when you recharge overnight, your brain has had time to wire its way around the concepts and the problems that you left it. And suddenly the solution, Stephan, you and I touched base, I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks ago. It was just a little bit before the holidays. And, you said, hey, your DuaneForrester.com website looks like crap. You need to work on this. And I'm like, oh, I'm building out a different website. And you're like, why? This one is like number 3 for your name. Why would you invest in anything else? And it was a light bulb moment for me. The light bulb came on the following morning because I had this entire construct in my head about why I was following the path I was following, and I justified it all, listening to the voices telling me, oh, it's the right choice, and so on. And I woke up the next morning and I'm like, you're a fool. He's right. Done. Later that day, I had reoriented everything. And now I look at it and think to myself, this is the right way. This is clearly the right way. And
all that was all great, except for the part where you said I'm a fool. Just delete that part. Everything else was perfect.
no, no, I'm a fool.
I know, but
Not
don't
you,
like.
me.
I know, but this is the thing. Like, your words are powerful, and when we
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I
self-deprecate,
agree. I agree. I don't
yeah, like
feel.
this is words are magical. They're incantations. So when you are derogatory or self-deprecating towards yourself, that's just, yeah, you're speaking it into existence.
You're absolutely right, because I actually have that conversation with people all the time, and yet I still fall into that trap where you say these things, and there is a much better way to phrase it, and so I think you're right. Yeah.
So the where people should go to get your book, to get your frameworks, and to follow you on social media, I'm guessing probably LinkedIn.
So yeah, if folks want to get in touch with me, DuaneForrester.com. The book is on Amazon. The Kindle version is there, obviously. I am available on LinkedIn as well. Folks want to track me down, I'm easy to find there. And feel free to reach out. I'm happy to engage, answer questions for folks, and help them solve their problems.
Awesome. Okay. And you're also available for consulting.
Yes, absolutely. And again, through the website, track me down. I'm happy to set up time with folks.
Awesome. Thank you, Duane. Thank you, listener. Thank you, viewer. Go out there and make the world a better place through marketing, AEO, SEO, and just all sorts of cool AI stuff. And we'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.
If you want to hear more conversations like this about how AI is reshaping search, then I recommend episode 458 with Rand Fishkin, episode 525 with Eric Enge, and episode 535 with me, Stephan Spencer. Also, I invite you to check out the show notes, transcript, action-based checklist, and all the URLs mentioned in this interview with Duane Forrester at marketingspeak.com/537. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share the episode, and more importantly, the entire show, Marketing Speak, with a friend. It'll really help this podcast grow and reach an impact. Thank you.